Hi, I'm Sheri Summers, and I am super happy to welcome you here. Before we get started with learning Spanish, I'd like to tell you a quick story. When I was around 15 years old, I remember taking my first driver's ed class. I remember sitting behind the wheel, absolutely terrified. The instructor asked if I'd ever driven before, even just pulled out of the driveway. And when I said no, I think he rolled his eyes a little. Well, I'm pretty sure he rolled his eyes a lot. I don't think he'd ever met anyone who had never, ever been behind the wheel of a car. I was a true beginner, and, to be honest, I was kind of a disaster. In fact, I didn't drive again for quite a few years. But over time, I gained confidence, and now I have to say, well, I'm a pretty damn good driver. So it's fascinating to me that there are all kinds of brains in this world. Some people are more logical, and some are more artistic, and some seem to have a really nice mix of both. In my former profession, I taught English. In fact, I spent years teaching English to people from all over the world, and I always found it fascinating how their brains worked. Some people just seemed wired for languages, and others found it really difficult, frustrating even, a total pull-your-hair-out kind of experience. And then when I started working one-on-one with students, I learned how to tailor my lessons to fit their brains, especially when I specialized in teaching pronunciation and accent coaching. I really noticed a difference between people who were musical and those who were more technical. The musicians could hear the subtleties, the rhythm, the flow, the tone, right away, and the engineers and sciencey types, not always. Some of them couldn't even hear the difference in the sounds, let alone copy them, but that didn't mean they were hopeless. Nope, not at all. It just meant we needed to approach things a little bit differently. So for some, I used numbers, so we could measure the length of the syllables or the strength of an attack sound. For others, they needed diagrams. These were essential because they needed to see what was going on, because they couldn't hear it clearly. The musicians didn't seem to need that. But those who were more analytical often liked having something to memorize and refer back to. Now, it didn't matter to me how someone's brain worked. They're all valuable. They just needed a different pathway for learning. Now, you might be wondering why I'm talking about all of this in a Spanish course. As you probably know, learning a language is really easy for young children. Their brains are wired for it. They pick up the sounds, the pattern, the accent. But as we get older, some of those parts of the brain begin to stiffen a bit. They don't shut down completely. They just don't bend as easily. It doesn't mean you can't learn. It just means your brain needs a different approach. Everybody says babies learn languages faster, but honestly, I kind of disagree. Sure, babies absorb things easily. They don't have to think about it. It just kind of settles into their brains. But how many babies do you know who can learn 50 new vocabulary words in a day? Well, you could. You could if you wanted. As an adult, you can do amazing things with your brain. But is it going to stick? Is it going to make sense? Not always. We just need a little workaround. So here's why I'm really making this program. I'm making it for my mom. She wanted to take Spanish in high school, but her mother told her no, she'd never use it. And now, wouldn't you know it, we both live in Panama, where Spanish is spoken everywhere. But because she never got the chance to develop her brain for language when she was younger, Spanish has been really pretty difficult for her. On a side note, years ago, I lived in Portugal and I spoke Portuguese. People sometimes said I sounded really good. I have a bit of an ear for language, but I remember meeting a young American whose accent was almost perfect in Portuguese. So we were all stunned to find out that he'd never even studied Portuguese before he moved there. It turns out he'd had a Spanish-speaking babysitter until he was 2 years old, just 2, and that was it. But because of that, his brain had been primed early. He hadn't even learned another language until adulthood, but that early exposure made all the difference. Well, my mom didn't get that, and honestly, neither did I until middle school when I started my first Spanish class. I guess my brain was still semi-malleable back then. I'm pretty sure my grandma thought my taking Spanish was silly, but at least my mom didn't forbid it. Okay, now back to the point. Some people have tried to learn a language before and felt completely out of place, like everyone else in the class had already driven down the road, while here I am still figuring out how to buckle my seatbelt. When everybody else is going forward, it's easy to feel like you're behind, or worse, that you're just not good at languages. But the thing is, it's not because you're dumb, it's just because your brain works differently. And that's why I created this program, for people who need to take their time and put the pieces together in a way that actually sticks. I myself am a big why person. I just love to know why. I can't just memorize a rule and be happy about it. I need to understand it. I need to understand why, and maybe you're like that too. So in this course, I will break Spanish down into very small parts. I'll explain why things work the way they do. I'll give you little clues for how to remember things. And I'll keep it short, just a few minutes each day. I like to call them Snacklets, tiny Spanish lessons you can chew on throughout the day. Oh, and as a teacher, I have to say, your language learning can't just stay in your head. You're going to need to listen, write things down, say them out loud, and maybe even sing them in the shower. You don't get to own your Spanish until you've worked with it for a bit. I used to tell my students, you need to approach something at least 10 different times before it really sticks. So I'm going to invite you to ruminate on a word, a phrase, maybe a little grammar hint. For a whole day, just let it bounce around in your head. Let it become familiar, and if you fall behind, no worries, everything will still be there waiting for you. My goal is to help you break through that mental block, the one that says, I'm too old, or I'm not good at this. That's just noise. Take it slowly. Make it fun. Let your brain surprise you. And by the way, learning a language as an adult has been proven to help prevent dementia and other brain-related illnesses. So really, you're doing something great for yourself. So if this sounds like something you'd enjoy, I invite you to listen to all of the free lessons I have, and if it feels like a good fit and you're willing to take this journey with me at a gentle pace, I hope you'll stick around. I don't want you to just learn words. I want you to understand how they work. I want your brain to feel like it's on an adventure, and I want to help open your world to millions of people you couldn't speak to before, and I promise it's an amazing experience. If you'd like to learn Spanish in a calm, supportive way, you can learn more about my audio course for older adults by clicking the link below or visiting SpanishSlowandEasy.com.